What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Joystick Ayrton. So by now, if you wanted a Deck OLED, it is probably there, or within a couple of days it will be. I want to talk about whether or not it's a good upgrade for you or me, and the massive amount of risk that Valve is taking, changing so many different aspects of the deck. So let's go ahead and dive right in. Okay, so I wanted to start this video off with the most important preface of the entire video. I am not getting a Steam Deck OLED. There's a whole bunch of different reasons why. Two of them are, one, the Lenovo Legion Go. I absolutely love that device. It's become my daily driver. And two, I really only use the Steam Deck for emulation, and I could, for the most part, care less about an OLED screen, and I'm not going to pay $700 for that. It's very good. If I didn't have a deck at all, I would definitely be getting one, but that's just kind of where we are. So for me right now, this is my LCD Steam Deck. It is in a billion pieces. I'm still working on getting the battery out and getting the screen out. I have the Deck HD screen and the Extreme Rate Atomic Purple shell. I also have some new thumbsticks. And there's just a whole bunch of stuff going on with this right now. And for me to upgrade all of this in my original deck, I want to say it was like 125 bucks or maybe 135 bucks. The new joysticks were like 20 bucks. I think this was like 20 bucks or 25 bucks. The Deck HD screen was about 100. So I want to say 150 probably altogether to upgrade this. This is the 512 high-end model from back, almost 2 years now. So I probably was right around 700 bucks plus all of this. I'll be at like 850 at the end of the day. I am really curious how much of an upgrade this screen is. There's some things I want to talk about that, but I also want to talk about just the sheer amount of things that Valve has changed. And I'm going to link down below a Gamers Nexus video just detailing how many things really did change. Because if you watch some of these other channels that I'm a big fan of, the Nerd Nest, the Phawx, Retro Game Corps, they go into the details about this, but he takes it all apart for you and shows you absolutely how insanely different they are, how many things Valve changed for numerous different reasons. So with that being said, I'm going to get all of this out of the way. We're going to talk about what's actually changed on the OLED deck, why I don't think it is a big enough change for me, but why I think you probably want it. Okay, so the biggest selling point for most people, there's two of them, the 90 hertz OLED screen and the much larger capacity, or not much larger, but a larger battery. So with that being said, we're going to start off with this motherboard. This is absolutely insanity, the differences between this board and the Deck OLED board. And there's a bunch of different reasons why, but one of the biggest reasons is Valve didn't know which direction they were going to go. They needed to be able to branch off however they saw fit, depending on what the market did, what the secondary market did, what developers did. So they packed in everything they could on this board, and they've now been able to fine tune all of that and change some paths for different things. So that is astronomical. I don't have the knowledge that GN does, but I would definitely recommend watching that video. It's linked down in the description below, and it's night and day difference between these two motherboards. So my big thing on the screen, it's 90 hertz, which is a good thing. A higher refresh rate. Are you going to be running at 90 most of the time? Probably not, as there is zero performance gain. So it just kind of depends, but it can make things a little bit smoother, especially on a non-VRR display. That's one of the big things on the Legion Go. It doesn't have VRR, but it is a 144 hertz screen, and that does help things not look like it's tearing as much if you get into a scenario where it is. A little bit less prevalent on the deck because you're running SteamOS and not Windows. So then you're getting into a bunch of other different things. You have all the buttons are a little bit different. The battery is kind of the big deal. People, going from an hour and a half to 2 hours of gameplay, from that up to 2.5 to 3.5 hours of gameplay. That's a very big discrepancy there, and you can get probably upwards of 4.5 hours depending on the title and whatever wattage you're trying to play at. So it is a massive upgrade. The biggest thing for me, if I was going to be getting the Deck OLED, is the screen, and that's that they got the bezels a little bit smaller. So you're really going from about a 7-inch to a 7.4-inch screen on the higher end models, and that really shrinks those bezels a little bit, which for me is probably the biggest disappointment in the Deck HD screen. Now, I'm not quite sure how bezels work necessarily, so I don't know if this is their fault, if it's Valve's fault, if it's whoever supplies the screen. But one of the biggest things for me on the Lenovo Legion Go is it basically has the smallest bezels of any handheld on the market. So that is a massive, massive thing. Now, I want you to keep in mind the risk that Valve is taking here. There's nothing saying people are going to come out in droves and buy this new deck. They're banking on a couple of things. Their backers and the absurd amount of love the deck has been getting from everyone for the most part. You have your fanboys for ASUS and Lenovo and GPD and everybody else, and everybody is scattered to some extent, but most people come back to a center stone of the deck being the best overall handheld on the market. So that's one spot. They've seen Nintendo do this with the Switch OLED. That was pretty darn successful. And they've put a lot of risk into it. They changed almost every component on the deck. Now, they're not massive changes, but they've improved them all to an extent. They're trying to take them all to that next level, making the buttons feel better, making them a little bit easier to service, like the screen and how it disconnects. All of that is great, but that all takes time for engineering. That takes time for sourcing new parts. You can't just go take the old parts from the old deck because they don't work on the new deck. That's a lot of engineering costs, that's a lot of part costs, that's a lot of sourcing costs. There's a lot of risk in that if this does not do very well financially. It's probably going to do just fine. I'm not sure what the numbers will end up being. It didn't look like anything was selling out. You could still order the limited edition model for X amount of time at the time of writing this. So that's all great, and I really didn't think that was going to happen because, one, a lot of people already have Steam Decks. A lot of people have upgraded them to an extent. A lot of people are buying other handhelds like the ASUS or the Lenovo Legion Go, so that market's a little bit smaller than it would be. And for the most part, the world's somewhat back to normal before the whole COVID shortage for every single thing on the market. So that changes how a lot of this works as well. But now I want to talk about where Valve really kind of, I don't want to say they stabbed us in the back because they didn't do that, but it's really unfortunate the serviceability and the upgradability of the old deck to the new deck and how those are just two completely separate devices. So let's talk about it. Okay, so since the new OLED deck is so different, and basically every single component that's on this table and the entire thing is taken apart outside of the battery, the front casing, and the screen is different. One thing that I would have loved to see is the ability to buy an OLED screen and just slap it on your old deck. Hell, if that was $300 or $250, I would probably buy it and upgrade that hands down. I think this is a twofold part. Either one, they would get a lot more sales or a lot more revenue off of selling that screen and the ability to attach it to your old deck. Or two, that would cut into their profits or into their sales so much on the OLED deck itself that it really wouldn't be worthwhile doing. And that would be what I would assume they were worried about. I'm sure at some point in time a bunch of engineers were sitting around a table thinking about, hey, what if we did X? And then they thought about it and it didn't financially make sense. And I'm not an engineer, so I don't know exactly why this was or couldn't have happened, but I think financially it makes a lot of sense why it didn't. It's just really unfortunate. You're not able to get all of these boards and all of these different parts to be compatible either, which is really unfortunate as well. But they changed so darn much, optimizing it, making them a little bit better. It's just unfortunate that there's no cross compatibility with any of the parts. This makes it really hard for people who maybe don't know that, and they go in and they're buying parts for the old deck, but they have the OLED deck or vice versa, and it causes them all kinds of nightmares. And then they end up having some kind of issue down the road and they have to end up buying a new deck. I think that's unfortunate because they're really just, it's not like Steam Deck 1 and Steam Deck 2. It's LCD versus OLED, and a lot of people, I think your general consumer would think, oh, well, they look pretty much the exact same. The only thing different is the screen, and that's just so far from the truth of how it all is working. But I think Valve is great. I think they've done a bunch for everybody. I think the Steam Deck is, for me, it is not the best handheld on the market, but I think overarching, it is the best handheld on the market. I prefer the Lenovo Legion Go. that is why I'm not buying a new Steam Deck. I use this mostly for emulation. I absolutely love the atomic purple shell. I got the Deck HD screen really just so I could make a video on it, see whether or not I thought it was stupid. So with all of those things combined, and my Lenovo Legion Go being my daily driver, only putting a couple hours on the deck a week, it doesn't make sense for me to spend that kind of money. But if the Steam Deck is your main use, and you can, even if you get a couple $100 out of your Steam Deck as is, and then you have the second one, or if you just keep them both, or if you can justify spending $700 for any reason, that extra couple hours of gaming can make a drastic difference for people depending on their use case scenario. So I can understand it. Just for me, it doesn't make sense. I've started racking up having too many handhelds and realizing that really I tend to pick my favorite one, and that's all I touch. Unless it dies, I don't have a charger, then I'll just, oh, well, I have a cloud save on The Witcher 3, let me grab this. So with that being said, I don't think it's a bad upgrade. I think you can justify it a bunch of different ways. And as long as you can justify it and it makes sense, by all means do it. I think Valve is stepping in the right direction. I think this was a perfect opportunity for them to enhance all their engineering, to push that towards what they really want the Deck 2 to be. And I think that's great. They're able to do that now and focus more on performance and hardware and maybe thermals and things of that nature, TDP, instead of worrying about buttons and trackpads and casings and screens. They've already done that. In 2 years, when a Deck 2 comes out, they'll be able to spend all of their time looking at the performance side of things. And I think that will come together as being just an incredible device. So we're 1.5 with the Steam Deck OLED, and we're moving on, and I think it's going to be a very interesting next couple of years. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.